It's been a while and it's so nice to see everyone again. For tonight's chat, we want to talk about yung nga, perpetual issues and perhaps learn from each other on how to deal with them. Your insights at the end of our presentation will surely be valuable. And this was drawn from our book by Dr. John and Julie Gottman. So they had this book on marriage. They did a lot of research on marriage through, and they've actually published several books. And we had an enrichment on one of their books before, if you remember.
In many, many ways, Margot and I are very different from the time we met each other in high school. For instance, she was very athletic. I was not. She liked music. Ako very picky with mine and I barely know lyrics. I like flashy, loud, and bright outfits, hashtag 80s. Margot prefers to be in pambahay everywhere she goes, if possible. I enjoy eating good fancy food. She is happy with double rice and gravy only sa kantin. Atenista siya, lasalista ako, to name a few shallow ones. Needless to say, these differences extend to the more serious areas like faith, politics, children, our extended family, sex, and finances. This is not to say we don't have things in common naman.
Well, for those of you who know our love story, after much ups and downs, both personal and together, the universe finally aligned and brought us together in an MMK worthy story. Our differences simply were not enough against the prospect of not spending the rest of our lives together. Like maybe some of you, after a good few years of honeymoon and bahay-bahayan, there was a gap starting to build between us. Our differences, highlighted especially by our different personality styles, have become increasingly difficult to live with. Looking back at those years, it was easy to spot the turmoil to be caused by the old opposites attract, no, sabi nila. Which is to mean that the qualities that we found most attractive in each other were the very things that were driving us apart.
Margot's organizer personality that I found attractive for the discipline she can impose on herself with whatever she sets out to do started to feel suffocating when she needs to make plans for the family.
Dondon's carefree, God will provide attitude that amazed me and made me feel abundant made me feel also very insecure, especially when I need to depend on him that way.
Margot's need to save the world attitude and passion for justice, and the less fortunate that I found so sexy and attractive, started to irritate me as I judge I have to compete for her attention.
And Dondon's strength, confidence, and dominating presence in a room that made me feel proud and secure has started to intimidate me, and I began to feel bullied. Although we were generally happy naman, we certainly felt like we weren't physically and emotionally connected like we used to be, or as we would like to. In addition, our continued struggle with a lot of problems na paulit-ulit or perpetual issues, which are fundamental differences in personality or lifestyle preferences, would create conflict.
Margot is always dreaming up of ways to fix the world's problems or fight the injustice and oppression of government. Like going to remote scary places and going to rallies. And I'm like, saan ba nagagaling ang hugot nito at di na nakontento? Some time ago, someone asked the same question to us. And she responded by saying, she has so much energy to give, she's restless and feels guilty for not doing anything. Might as well channel it to something good, something exciting. To which I replied, that tendency drives me crazy as I want stability and comfort and safety and wasting time with each other, letting the world turn without us sometimes. Margot replies jokingly she is allergic to wasting time.
Another perpetual conflict of ours is money and all the other sub issues surrounding it. When Dondon wants to spend on something that I judge is frivolous, like a new TV or a ridiculous trip to SNR, he acts like we have all the money in the world. Yet, when we need to discuss expenses for the house or things that I think are important for the family, he says we can't afford it right now.
Whatever the perpetual conflict is, be it lifestyle, sex, in-laws, money, whenever one of us press an issue, the other gets tense up and gets real quiet or be totally defensive or dismissive. Nobody want to deal with it. Both of us are afraid of a drawn out conflict. The thing is, we both knew we have to keep talking about important issues if we are to bridge the growing gap in our relationship. A gap that was starting to affect our sexual relationship also. Romance was diminishing quite rapidly. Even initiating sex was a source of conflict na. I like to have sex to create romance and warmth. She likes romance and warmth to have sex. Margot shared it's difficult to be sexually aroused when she's not emotionally engaged. Foreplay for her is a deep conversation. And I'm like, what?
In preparing this presentation, Dondon and I decided to have a quick conversation about a perpetual issue, which is our finances and sharing in the decision making, and see where and how it will go since we needed something real to share for this talk anyway. After that interesting conversation, which we both agreed characterizes a typical conversation, we decided to comment on it now as a third party observer, drawing from our experience of journeying with other couples over the years in Marriage Encounter and other sources.
So, as best we could recall that conversation recently, here it is blow by blow with a running commentary. Okay? Ipo-project ko lang sa screen. Yung aming, hindi siya dialogue, ito yung aming conversation. Okay.
So,
ito na yung aming conversation.
Okay. Lights, camera, action. So Don, you were saying the other day how you were worried about the electric bill and all the others. Maybe we can find time from our crazy schedules to sit down and do some planning and budgeting?
Plus yon, she shared her concern about finances and shares responsibility for the problem of not planning. Dondon. Okay, let's.
I've been feeling a bit, so plus rin yun kasi he shows na he's ready to listen. Ako naman, I've been feeling a bit worried lately, especially with all the uncertainty. But I know there are so many other things on our plate that...
Plus yon, kasi she describes her feelings, but then kinabig. Yup, so hard to find time, laging may ganap. But yes, we should do this. I just need to attend to a few commitments and deliverables.
So, minus kasi ininterrupt niya ako. Pero plus, because he's validating what I'm saying. So, and he also states his priorities. Okay. So, and then I say, I'm feeling a bit uncertain and confused with the status of our finances. It's gotten to the point where even the most minor decisions are difficult, like which brand of butter to buy. I really need to connect with you on this so that I have a better sense of where we are.
Oh, okay yon, kasi she stated her real need to communicate and expresses frustration without blaming. Sagot ko naman, really? Bakit?
So here, positive kasi he shows that he's hearing me and is asking for me to explain further. And so I say, well, it's like 1 minute we're talking about how are we going to pay for our credit card. Then the next day, we're talking about where we can best put a swimming pool. Yung ano lang ha, plastic lang ha.
So, good yon kasi she shared information. Ha, oo nga, tayo nga yan.
So plus yon kasi he lightened the mood with a joke and he shared responsibility. And so I say, yeah, I was wondering why you were so set on getting a pool all of a sudden. It felt like I stepped into an alternate reality. So plus...
So, kasi she tried to keep it light, pero may konting sucker punch na. Ako lang ba may gusto? I thought you were excited about it also.
And so, medyo negative yun kasi defensive na siya. And so I say, yes, I think it would be great for the kids, especially since they can't leave the house. I guess it just shows how confused I am about our money situation. I mean, I am just worried about how we will pay for these things, especially since we've been worried about so many other expenses.
Good, sharing responsibility and expressing her need, her worries. Yeah, I get how that would be confusing. My mind is just all over the place at the moment with all the commitments and obligations.
So, plus yon kasi he acknowledged the feelings and he's expressing his own needs, no? So, sabi ko, oo nga, parang sunod-sunod nga yung mga meeting mo.
Validates my priorities. Good. Wala ka rin naman time eh. Mas busy ka pa nga yata.
So, negative yon kasi defensive siya. Tapos nagbablame pa. And so I say, Maybe we should just pretend our internet died kahit isang araw lang.
So okay yun. At this point, she was trying to make a joke to repair already and lighten the tone kasi naging defensive na ako. Game! Pero paano naman yung porn ko?
So again, that's a plus kasi he rode with the joke, no?
To diffuse
To
it.
diffuse the situation. And so I said, "Hi, I'm just worried if we're living beyond our means or if I'm just being too praning."
Okay yun, because now she's trying to express more feelings and concerns. Sagot ko, did you remind the kids ba not to use the aircon during the day?
So negative kasi he avoided my feelings and he brought it back to the issue. And so I said, I tell them to turn it off all the time. I just wish I had an idea of what we can afford, what we can project, what we need for our future, and even an idea of what we want for the future. Nakaka-insecure. Without this conversation, it's so hard for me to keep up. You feel burdened by the credit card, but in the same breath, you splurge at the grocery.
Okay, so if you notice, she expresses more of her feelings, but in a little more intense way. Meron na rin konting blame. Yeah, gets naman kita. Confusing nga siguro yon. Pero naman, ilang beses lang ba ako nagluho grocery? Food is the only thing I spend nowadays. Wala na nga ako ibang luho.
So plus, kasi he's focused na on me, but he zeroes in on the spending and not on the feelings and becomes a bit defensive again. And so I say, I just don't understand why we can't seem to pin down a time to talk about this. I feel very anxious, most especially knowing how your work is super affected by the pandemic. Sometimes I see you depressed or even angry when you talk about gastos. So I get worried also. I don't know how to position myself.
Okay, you can see that Margot is trying to express more of her feelings and concerns. Sagot ko, yeah, I get that exactly. I get anxious too. And yes, depressed when I have to deal with our expenses. Lalo na mga surprises. Siguro nga confusing lalo sa'yo.
So okay yon kasi he showed support emotionally and is trying to empathize. And so I say, I just really want to know where we are, what we can and cannot do. I want us to have a plan. You know I feel secure that way. You remember naman how I felt like when I stopped working for other people and lost having to bring home a paycheck. Parang I didn't have any authority over any of our gastos. At least that's how I felt. And I hated that feeling because I never worked harder in my life, but I feel I lost a vote. Tapos parang you get all tensed up pa about where we are financially and my side comments pa when I need some money for the house. I get nervous.
So this is very good because she expressed more feelings and shares information. Ha? You have access naman to our checkbook and bank accounts anytime.
So he ignores the feelings and focuses on another issue, no? Yeah, sure, you say that and allow me to get what we need. Wala naman tayo masyadong choice most of the time unless gusto natin gutumin. The point is, you send mixed signals. You talk about how bad this pandemic is in your business and don't know where the money is coming from. And the next thing I know, you have carpenters here building stuff for you and you want to buy a pool. Ano ba talaga?
O boom, galit na siya dito. Blames na and attacks. So kinabahan na ako. Silence. Nervous laughter. Di pa naman tayo gugutumin. Ako pa, pagkain muna bago lahat, di ba? We're fine naman.
So again, trying to deflect the feelings. And I say, yeah, until this pandemic extends for another year.
Ayun, so she just went along with me, backing away from her own concerns and feelings. Okay, so that was pretty much ano, our conversation. So, himay natin yun.
Ako na ba? So, if we were to counsel Dondon and Margaux, we could first tell them that perpetual issues can lead to conflict avoidance and lack of connection, which will be a long spiral down that will necessarily be increasingly be more difficult to recover from.
In this exercise, though, the occasional smiles and laughter made me feel secure that our marriage showed some strength and growth. I also felt the genuine warmth between us despite a difficult conversation. I also noticed that we were both willing to share in the problem naman. If you noticed, medyo nagka-blaming din pero nabawasan na ang defensiveness namin, which for me is a reassuring step towards progress. When the situation got tense a bit, you saw Margot and sometimes ako attempt to offer a quick repair by giving a soothing remark, sometimes with a joke or a smile, which the other accepts or sinasakyan. Looking back, this kind of repairs and accepting of it kept our conversation still on the friendly, cordial zone. And kahit papano, medyo productive naman siya, I think.
So why then is if there is warmth and affection between me and Dondon, did we feel increasingly isolated and lonely? Let's examine this deeper. I noticed that whenever I would talk about my feelings, Dondon would back away by deflecting or zeroing in on quick facts. Instead of probing my feelings as we are supposed to be trained to do, a question about details would be asked. I judge there's some discomfort in talking about the feelings in the context of this sensitive topic.
But notice also how Margot sometimes just went along with my deflection. I judge perhaps she is afraid of losing our connection altogether. The conversation would lead back to facts and point of views and a few times blaming pa nga. To be fair, the facts and questions were sparked by questions brought about by the other naman. But there are several moments when clearly may mga sidestepping para iwas conflict. Okay lang naman to avoid the fight every now and then. The problem is doing this habitually sidestepping the issues leads to emotional distance and lack of connection, which we all know leads to all sorts of marital issues. Nakapag-usap nga kami this way every now and then, but it only led us to deeper frustration.
And so this is where the dialogue and just as importantly, the dialoguing way of life plays a critical role. We will not be discussing about the 1010 anymore and instead focus on this way of life that we espouse in our community, which simply is to be cognizant of our spouse's feelings, to listen for cues or bids, and to take risks in trusting the other with their feelings even outside the 1010. The values of the dialogue do not start and end in the 20 minutes we share. It's a lifestyle, it's 24/7.
Margot and I are slowly realizing that rather than avoiding conflict, we must try to take a careful look at our goals around our differences. Of course, we're not suggesting that we try to find the perfect solution to our disagreements with money, time, career, or other perpetual issues we have. But alam naman natin that the root of this conflict is not the money. It's the fundamental differences in personality, behavior, and perspectives. Margot is an organizer and I will always be a catalyst. We all know that one is not better than the other and there is no right or wrong here. To be able to talk about our disagreements on an ongoing basis and still feel good about each other, to make peace with our differences. Take note, make peace, hindi surrender. And realizing that the only way forward for me and Margot is a whole lot of compromise and give and take. It's really our only path to a happy coexistence without growing resentment. I'll say that again, a whole lot of compromise and give and take.
Another thing that helps us to occasionally view our conflict as we would as if we are a third party involved observing and listening. We're not suggesting to do this kind of exercise na may running commentary. That would not be realistic. But a good exercise is to imagine if it were someone else's conflicts that you are observing. What would you be advising each other? You will find that this step back to a more objective or bird's eye view standpoint can provide greater insight and make more room for compromise and dialogue. Again, the problem is not Margot, it's not Dondon, it's not the money, it's not the time. The problem is like a soccer ball that the two of us kick around, looking at it together from different angles and trying to figure out together how best we can take it down the field. Sometimes may progress sa usapan namin, sometimes wala. Pero ganun talaga yon. Kasi perpetual issue nga. We learn to live with it without harming the relationship, especially with feelings of resentment, of losing, of giving up. Yun bang feeling na ako na lang lagi nagbibigay or nagpapasensya?
I think the most important thing is that Margot and I do our best to avoid gridlock. Being gridlocked is like being in a traffic jam bumper to bumper. No one giving way. No one willing to compromise. We will both feel stuck and eventually begin to see each other as enemies on either side of an issue. Margot and I need to learn that we don't have to be adversaries just because we hold opposing points of view. Kaya nga there is truth to opposites attract. And for good reason. When opposites like Margaux and I see the world from the other person's perspective, we get to we get to see the whole picture, and that can be an advantage for our marriage.
I think recognizing that we can dialogue about our conflicts without harming the relationship is a great advantage in building emotional intimacy, which is what Dondon and I need to do the next time we talk about a perpetual issue. More importantly, remembering that the dialogue is a 24/7 value we try to live, we can be more sensitive when the other shares a feeling and, in fact, dive down deeper into it without having to call, wait, mag-10-10 na lang tayo ngayong gabi Mamaya na. Pwede namang ituloy yung conversation. No? So when we do that in the context of discussing our perpetual issues, there's an opportunity to accept each other's differences and arrive at compromise. To live the dialoguing way of life is a commitment to each other's feelings inside and outside the dialogue.
Again, the goal is not to solve the problem once and for all. That was our biggest mistake when confronting our perpetual issues. Solution, merong kailangan mali, merong kailangan tama. Instead, the goal has shifted to being able to talk about this and use the techniques we learned in dialogue. Paying attention to repair attempts and diffusing the situation was a very important learning we had thanks to our couple of DJ sessions we had. Bawal pikon. Yung mga ibang side comments at patawa, diffuser yon, hindi yon attacks. This way, we can begin to see that we are on the same side here. That there are more things that we share and that our differences are rooted in the personalities we have found endearing in the first place.
Another advice that Dondon and I need to heed is avoiding interruption, especially when feeling anxious already. When Dondon interrupts me and expresses his domineering behavior, I tend to just shut down or worse, bite back. Like in our 10-10, we both need to allow each other much room to express our thoughts and feelings, especially the difficult ones. This way, we will feel heard, understood, and listened to, not just during the dialogue time.
Now, let's go back to being gridlock for a bit, as we think many of us are often caught up in this. Every marriage may perpetual issues. Kung wala ka niyan, tanong mo sa asawa mo, malamang siya yung laging give, ikaw yung take. Anyway, we pointed out that perpetual issues are conflicts based on personality differences and lifestyle preferences that tend to not go away. Now, research shows that the happiest couples can live peacefully with their perpetual issues as long as they keep talking about them in an open and productive way. But perpetual issues that get gridlock conflicts are very harmful to relationships. So we're going to show you something to see if you can relate to any or all of it.
So yung gridlock couples, they express little amusement or affection when they discuss a problem. So walang mga diffuser jokes. They take the issue very personally and feel rejected by each other when it comes up. So if you don't agree with me, you don't love me. You're rejecting me. They make each other villains in the conflict. One partner is completely right and the other is completely wrong. They become entrenched in their positions and never compromising. They spin their wheels, digging themselves deeper and deeper into conflict, and they eventually become emotionally distant and disengaged.
Ayaw natin yan.
So if we don't want gridlock, the advice is make dialogue and communication the goal rather than finding the perfect solution. The solution is not a solution. So see the problem as a third party outside the relationship. The problem is not your partner. Recognize there are no right and wrong solutions. Accept that conflict may never go away, but you can live together peacefully anyway. And look for humor.
Last two things we want to share to hopefully make our perpetual conflicts opportunities to love, opportunities for intimacy. The first is creating a culture of shared values and meaning. It takes a lot of sensitivity and vigilance to accept and honor each other's point of view. But when we get to do that, we get to create those shared values and meaning. This does not happen overnight. It is a process that occurs when Margaux and I find ways to live side by side respecting each other's goals and dreams and perspectives. We are sending you here later in the chat box a couple of questions you can download to answer on your notebooks in your own time. These questions are very rich, so you don't have to do it all at once. Take your time, then share with each other, talk about the differences, and more importantly, the similarities. For example, when Margot and I did this, we answered one of the questions: what is one of your life dreams that you would like to fulfill before you die? You notice also that these are not phrased as dialogue questions we are used to. This is also a good tool to spark normal conversation and practice living the dialoguing values and technique outside 1010. Anyway, I learned that Margot's dream is to build a social enterprise large enough to touch and improve many, many lives. Well, I kind of knew that. I didn't know that she also wanted to do this for herself to also benefit from it financially and abundantly. I misjudged all along na gusto niya magpakamartir all the time. I discovered na gusto rin pala ng asawa ko kumita. And though this may sound mababaw, we certainly discovered that we shared the same goal and value of improving as many lives, including ourselves. So bili na kayo sa Shopee store namin. Anyway, the questions we will send you are very insightful and we encourage you to take time to go through it deeper. So later, please, you should send namin sa chat box.
Finally, Dondon and I discovered that there's no way our marriage will improve by trying to change each other. Fail yun. Although we still try. But happiness seems to come whenever we focus on each other's positive attributes, our endearing qualities. Whenever we express gratitude and appreciation for these qualities, we tend to create a loving and accepting atmosphere between us. But this is why we start our weekends this and all like this, and also how we introduce ourselves in ME, diba? Your most endearing quality. When we do this, we create an atmosphere that is optimal in finding compromise and understanding around perpetual issues. There's another exercise that we can do regularly with our spouse, and for tonight, this will be our 10-10. We will flash on screen a Thanksgiving checklist. Select three you are most grateful for about your spouse. Share in loving detail how you feel about each of them. You may describe and elaborate during your verbal dialogue.
Thank you for your attention. That ends our talk. We will flash now on screen. Again, the instruction is pick three you are most grateful for in what we will show and share in loving detail how you feel about each of them. Okay, nakikita ba ninyo yan? It's the Thanksgiving checklist. Your energy, your strength, the way you take charge, the way you let me direct things, how sensitive you are to me, blah, blah, blah. So, pumili lang kayo ng tatlo that you are most grateful for in your spouse. Describe it in your notebook and how you feel about it. And in your verbal dialogue, share it with your spouse fondly.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Time.
Time starts 2 minutes ago.